I do. Good morning.
Good morning. We're adjusting ourselves.
Yes, we're
And
just
we're,
getting things
we're
together.
thinking maybe you're adjusting yourself too.
Yes, and so we'll do some of the usual things of preparing to broadcast without actual. Well, I guess we're broadcasting our preparations, aren't we? First, there's the sound. We have to have the sound of the rattling tin toy. And I think I'll noodle on the flute for a minute. And after that, we're going to do these shows. So probably within, 60 seconds or so, I should think.
We gathered together.
Mysterious sounds this morning. The cat's putting her ears back at this.
Oh, there she goes. Well, I don't know that she's ever actually hung out on your lap that long before.
Well, I played
while playing the flute.
Yeah, she looked pretty annoyed.
She was. That's really loud for cats. You got to figure.
I figure. All right, and you're still working on
your
your
thing. You do your thing.
I'll do my
thing. The thing. Good morning.
Shall we just
introduce the show?
Yes. Okay. Good morning. Hi, I'm Teresa Mitchell. This is Ani Haynes, and this is now Bridge to a Better World is the name of the show. And I'm just going to launch into some discussion of what's been going on. The thing that's mostly on my mind, I'm not doing really headlines this time around, is Mr. Lukashenko of Belarus got up and shot off his mouth, fortunately only his mouth, about how he has nuclear weapons. And he would not hesitate to use them if he thought it was necessary. I think I have a quote here. God forbid I have to make a decision to use those weapons today, but there would be no hesitation if we face an aggression, he said.
Excuse me.
That was Tuesday during a meeting with Lukashenko last week. Vladimir Putin said tactical nuclear weapons would not be deployed to Belarus until storage facilities were ready in early July. However, the Belarusian president said Tuesday that, quote, everything is ready, end quote. And, quote, it could just take a few days for us to get what we'd asked for and even a bit more, end quote. So he's probably lying if Putin said they needed to wait till they had facilities. Much as I despise Putin, he's not as much of an idiot as Lukashenko quite, I don't think. At least Lukashenko hasn't launched any aggressions against his neighbors yet. But he's well known for being, a Lukashenko. I'll just leave it at that. And it says here, Lukashenko later clarified his comments about having no hesitation to use the weapons, noting that he would first consult with Putin. Well, he didn't consult with Putin before he shot off his mouth, did he? He said, quote, listen, if a war starts, do you think I will look around? I'll pick up the phone, and wherever he is, he picks it up. If he calls, I pick it up anytime. It's no problem at all to coordinate launching a strike, end quote. So this got me to looking at U.S. nuclear posture review. And of course, the Russians have been brooding about their nuclear weapons more than just in fear, I think. They apparently wanted to make it clear that they are quite dangerous and are considering using a tactical nuclear weapon. I hate that phrase. Tactical nuclear. There's nothing. Well, anyway, so I'll get into this. In case they were losing in Ukraine. So, and the whole idea is to make them lose at Ukraine. And the question is, how far will they go with this nuclear bullshit? And that could be the title of this show, Nuclear Bullshit, and how to avoid it. Well, so I suppose that it would be possible to clear the field with a nuclear weapon. But my point is, you can't use them at all. It's just the same as chemical weapons. If there's any substantial use, then everything escalates. In the Second World War, chemical weapons were at the ready on both sides. The U.S. Actually moved chemical weapons to the you wouldn't say the battle area, but to the theater is what they say, as if it were all a play. Life's but a play, and they had them on a ship in an Italian port, which caught fire and nearly gave away the whole game. So both sides were ready to use them, but both sides didn't want to go there. And as ugly as the Second World War was, I think that's an astonishing thing. And it's a wonderful thing that they didn't go there, except of course that you could say that Germany selectively applied them to Jews and queers and Romani. So I looked at the nuclear posture of the United States, and one of these one of the places to look is called everycrsreport.com, which keeps track of U.S. Nuclear policy. And what I found is that Biden's policy declares that the fundamental role of the U.S. nuclear arsenal is to deter a nuclear attack, but will still leave open the option that nuclear weapons could be used in extreme circumstances to defend the vital interests of the United States or its allies or partners. That's a quote. According to a March 25th report this year by the Wall Street Journal, this might include nuclear use to deter enemy conventional, biological, chemical, and possibly cyber attacks. Now, the U.S. population has grown so passive, so distracted, that there was no pushback on this. And I think there needs to be in a huge way. There was a time when this would have created quite a bit of discussion in a previously much more democratic society. But frankly, we are living in a society that is very heavily mind controlled. I think Noam Chomsky has set that plate best in understanding just how far down that road we have gone. But one of the aspects of mind control is simply disinterest and passivity when it comes to any democratic participation in these affairs of existence. This nuclear policy has a lot to do with whether you and anyone else gets to exist any further, which I think I'll explain a bit more about that too, because people have forgotten what this all means.
And if I could,
yeah,
part of the way that mind control works is also to constrain our choices, right? So that the media, liberal or conservative media, really sort of, what do we want to say? Put our choices out there in a very restricted way. You know, do we want nuclear war or do we want the Russians to just sort of take over the world?
A false dichotomy.
Indeed.
Sort of like, do you want nuclear power or coal? Well, that's a false dichotomy.
Or capitalism. There is no alternative.
Yeah, don't even bother the dichotomy there. You want capitalism or capitalism? And I think one of the ways that they keep that in place, as I always say, and that I intend to say a lot more, is people don't even know what capitalism is, and that's an advanced state of mind control. The Nuclear Posture Review, it says, also underscores our commitment to reducing the role of nuclear weapons and reestablishing U.S. leadership in arms control, and it emphasizes the administration's commitment to stability, avoiding costly arms races, and facilitating risk reduction in arms control arrangements where possible, end quote. Now, I will say on behalf of the Biden administration that where they have heard these aggressive statements out of Belarus and out of Russia, they have not responded in a hysterical way. And it's like they are the grown-ups in the room and they have returned, which is reassuring and also makes me think just how fraught the situation is with the idiots trying to get back into power and being so close to doing so using anti-democratic means, of course. Of course. The results of the Nuclear Posture Review were briefed to NATO allies when Biden joined other leaders in Brussels on March 24th for a summit focused on the alliance response to the Russian war against Ukraine. The classified version of the NPR was briefed to select congressional members on March 28th, and the unclassified version will be released in April. Thank you. Yes, I should slow down. But even after all these years, I still get this irrational thought. It's like, oh, I'm getting into the weeds and people don't want to hear it, so I'll talk really quickly and get it over with. Since the end
so
of the
we're working on slowing down.
Yes, this is my amazing broadcasting technique that I have developed or that I haven't developed after all these decades. Anyway, since the end of the Cold War, successive presidents and outdated U.S. nuclear weapons and risk reduction policy through comprehensive nuclear posture reviews, which produce a strategy document that outlines the role of these weapons. So each previous post-Cold War nuclear posture review, including those by President Bill Clinton in 1996, President Bush in 2002, Barack Obama in 2010, and President Trump, God help us, in 2018, has made adjustments that reflect the foreign and military policies of each administration, overall reflecting more continuity than change. So the Russian nuclear weapons use policy is similar to U.S. policy. It states that Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons, including when Moscow is acting in response to the use of nuclear and other types of weapons of mass destruction against it and or its allies, as well as in the event of aggression against the Russian Federation with the use of conventional weapons when the very existence of the state is in jeopardy. Now, to the point, I could get, as I say, into the weeds of the nuclear posture review, but the point that really bothers me is the idea that the weapons that Lukashenko has are tactical nuclear weapons. I don't think the word tactical can be applied to nuclear weapons. After all these years of them being used as strategic deterrents, and the size of them has changed so that Lukashenko idiotically was bragging that his weapons were 10 times as large as those used in Hiroshima and the forgotten Nagasaki. So that means that they are 100 kiloton weapons, enough to completely obliterate a city. Now, the 10 kiloton weapon was enough to obliterate a city and did so rather horribly. The 100 kiloton weapons, they're huge. And I think that given the posture of the United States as it was expressed for all those years under the Cold War, given the number and nature and readiness of nuclear weapons on under the control of the United States, China, Britain, France, and Russia, it is impossible to have a tactical nuclear weapon. Particularly, it is impossible to have one of that size. So Lukashenko is saying that he would think nothing of using a city-destroying weapon if there were aggression, that's his word, against Belarus. Now, currently, Belarus is certainly feeling the effects of the war against Ukraine, not just in observing all of the violence so close to its borders, but in having to suffer the continual incursion of frightened civilians and soldiers desperately trying to get into its borders and get away from the conflict. So they're dealing with it in a big way, and it would be interesting to know. It would be vital, existential, to know exactly what Belarus, what Lukashenko would consider an aggression. The situation is fraught, and they are, of course, very much supporting Russia in this collective punishment against Ukraine. But it is impossible for me to imagine that a 100 kiloton weapon could go off anywhere on the globe and not provoke the immediate deployment of strategic nuclear weapons across the globe. We have satellites. I say we, the United States has satellites, whether you like it or not, that detect nuclear, that are capable of detecting nuclear explosions, to the point that unless they're very deeply hidden, they're obvious in less than a second, and within however many seconds it takes for the speed of light to cross from one side of the globe to the other. That's how fast nuclear weaponry would be alerted that such a horrible thing had happened. And I say that this thing is nearly automated, but hopefully there is a bit of hesitation available, but only a bit. So Lukashenko is basically threatening the entire planet with his idiocy, and there is very little discussion of it. I think that I will go to my favorite, just in terms of usage, the Google News aggregation, and I will look at the top 4 items. They are unlawful policing in Minneapolis, 50 million under severe storm threat, A cyber attack, which was pretty substantial, millions stolen from Oregon and Louisiana and other places in the United States, and this is by Russians. And this is arguably an aggression. And a number of other headlines, but nowhere on the, as they say, above the folder on the front page, is there any discussion of nuclear posture or what Lukashenko said so disturbingly earlier in the week. And I want that to change. I want some democracy to break out and people to think about what that means. I've said from
actual
time to time,
repercussions.
actual repercussions, yes. It's impossible. I mean, 100 kiloton detonation, whether it's just, Lukashenko accidentally blowing himself up, anything will immediately probably provoke, I'm sorry to say, a strategic nuclear exchange. And a strategic nuclear exchange is not survivable. I was deeply alarmed during the Trump administration and shortly thereafter when people were talking about survivable nuclear exchanges. That's laughable. I mean,
it also tells me the age of the people discussing it missed out on the Cold War.
Yes.
And so I think it's probably prudent to be talking about the fact that nuclear war is very, very bad. Nuclear war is not a winnable situation. Nuclear war must be opposed. How do we even need to say this anymore? Any nuclear exchange is a crime against humanity, a crime against the planet, and likely to end us all. And the fact that people are being rather cash talking about it, and the fact that Lukashenko, who is known to be pretty unstable and brutal to his own population, now has access and brags about it, is of great concern, and we need to treat it as such.
How old is Lukashenko, do you think? I mean, just
I
looking
don't
at
know.
him, he looks to be about my age.
I
So
don't
I
know.
don't know how he can talk about, I guess he's just that much of an idiot that he can talk about nuclear weapons in such a casual manner. Kim Jong-un has, very much bragged about the fact that his nation has a nuke or two. They possibly would be able to actually detonate one carried by one of their Cold War era aircraft, I suppose, and get as far as Seoul or somewhere. Their ICBM threat, despite the hysteria in the press, is still not really credible. I mean, it takes a lot to actually create a weapon that can survive near orbit reentry and still detonate. As a matter of fact, the United States has only done that once. Has only once in its history launched an ICBM as a test to see if its bomb would actually detonate, and did that over the vast South Pacific, and that was generations ago. It's a terrifying thing to do, and of course it risks a conflagration. So I guess that wraps it up for my discussion of what really should be top of the news. Keeping on with my conceit of many decades now of news you're not supposed to know. Apparently, this is not up for discussion. And really, with all the talk of democracy, it's about as serious as Kim Jong-un is when he talks about communism. People in North Korea don't understand what communism is, and people in the United States don't understand what democracy is, and people in the United States don't understand what capitalism is, and so we go blundering lightly into the event horizon.
Thanks.
Tra-la-la. Here we are. That would be the fool card in the tarot deck, I think.
No, it would not. I will have to say no.
Looks that way anyway. To the untutored, let us say.
Okay.
Well, he's about to step off a cliff, and he's, often kind of. He's not looking.
You want to school me on tarot?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about how it looks to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I know, that's fascinating. My ignorance is just an amazing thing.
It's true. Yeah.
I could go on all day about my ignorance.
The fool does look like he's about to jump off.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes, that's true.
All right.
All right.
I am unanimous in this.
Goodness gracious me. What to say after that? We were talking about somewhere mixed up in that was the notion that we don't know what democracy is in this country. I want to maybe do a little bit further look at that at a show coming up. Lukashenko is 4 years older than you, by the way.
Huh?
Um, but a few years ago, we call it 2017. It was a different world. Um, Timothy Snyder wrote a piece that was published in the Dallas Morning News, and it was a piece that says what you, yes, you can do to save America from tyranny. And back on Positively Revolting, which was broadcast on cable community radio for 25 years, um, we went over this a few times. First, when it was published, and Trump was rather fresh in, and we were looking ahead down the road. And then, as things unfolded, as it were, we revisited the article a couple of times. And I thought it would be interesting from this vantage to check it out and see how we've done. I'm going to go through the points very fast because, yeah, I don't think we need to dwell in the future show coming up. We will, in fact, dwell maybe a little bit harder and dig down into what some of these have looked like in these last 6 years. Number one, do not obey in advance. Much of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a repressive government will want, and then they'll start to do it without being asked. And I'm going to go ahead and say, maybe in this case, not so much the government, but the violent radical right that does things like shoot up sound stages or theaters of product with not particularly veiled threats about what they would do to stores and employees that sold Pride merchandise. You know, so what do we see? We see stores dumping Pride merchandise. As much as I've hated the corporatization of Pride and queerness, the commercialization and commodification of it, more do I hate to see stores uh, obeying in advance what they believe to be a radical right violent mandate to depart from anything queer. So, defend an institution. Follow the courts or the media, or a court or a newspaper. Do not speak of our institutions unless you are actually making them yours on your behalf, on their behalf. Institutions don't protect themselves and they go down like dominoes unless each is defended from the beginning. And I at the time that this article came out, I thought about that and I was like, I don't know, the courts, they're pretty strong with the press, freedom of press. Well, we have corporatized press, but it's there. They say what the owners want them to say. Oh, but in light of the last 6 years, and we have this growing chasm wherein, a significant part of the right wing talks about how the press is evil and how journalists should, there were T-shirts that, let's just say, encouraged violence towards journalists. And again, things got a lot weirder, a lot worse than I would have thought. So defending institutions actually was far more important than I gave credence to at the time this article came out 6 years ago. Recall professional ethics. When leaders set a negative example, professional commitments to practice, to adjust practice, become much more important. It's hard to break a rule of law state without lawyers. It's hard to have show trials without judges. So again, looking at a disturbing trend in Oregon legislature with the Republican walkouts. Those Republicans may have ended their own political careers, but they got big concessions from the Democrats to get back to the table. How is that the thing? How is that wise? How does that move us forward? It looks to me like, in fact, there was professional ethics sellout. That's what I would say.
That's just an amazing phenomenon. One thing that caught my eye about that is one of them said, one of the Senate Republicans, Senate, I think it's the legislative Republicans said that in reference to the law which makes him now ineligible, the law which was passed by a plebiscite of the voters here in Oregon, which makes him now ineligible for office because of his actions, that he talked as if it were an optional thing. It's like, oh, well, we're not going to, surely we won't go forward with that. It's just magical thinking on his part, and it just makes me wonder how far it goes.
Indeed. When listening to politicians, distinguish certain words. Look out for the expansive use of terrorism. Look out for the expansive use of extremism, exception, and emergency. Be calm when the unthinkable arrives. When the terrorist attack comes, remember that all authoritarians at all times either await or plan such events to order and in order to consolidate power. Don't fall for it. Be kind to our language. Avoid pronouncing the phrases everyone else does. Think of your own way of speaking. Don't repeat catchphrases from the media or from politicians. Stand out. Someone has to. It's easy with words and deeds to follow along. It can feel strange to do something else, but do it. Believe in truth. To abandon facts is to abandon freedom. Investigate. Figure things out for yourself. Spend more time with long articles. Subsidize investigative journalism by subscribing to print media and investigative journalistic outlets. Understand what good sources are. I'm going to depart here and say, when you're investigating, understand what good sources are, as opposed to the ever popular, I've done my own research and therefore I buck everything science has to say because I've seen it on YouTube 3 different times.
That's a brutal abuse of the word research, but yeah, it's common.
Right. Become familiar with those sites that help us sort through propaganda and rumor and conjecture. I know that Snopes is problematic. There's Prop or Not, which is a propaganda review site. All of these sites are problematic in one way or another.
Not very, though. I mean, Snopes is generally right on.
Generally. But again, do due diligence before one believes, especially in this moment of AI deep fake stuff that's starting to roll out. Practice corporeal politics. Power wants your body softening in your chair and your emotions dissipating on the screen. Get outside, put your body in unfamiliar places with unfamiliar people, make new friends, march with them, exchange ideas outside of your immediate family.
Touch grass, as people say.
Indeed. Make eye contact and small talk. Again, it's human connection. And as we become more isolated, and especially, COVID really got us all isolated, and it's been hard for a lot of folks to reconnect. It is our human duty. It is our human need. Take responsibility for the face of the world. If you notice hate speech and nastiness scrawled on something, do something about it. Don't just look away. Remove the graffiti and counter the hate. It does go on. It goes on another, 7 points. I guess I'm just going to quickly go through them. Hinder the one-party state. The parties that took over states were once something else. They exploited a historical moment to make political life impossible for their rivals. Vote in local and state elections while you can. Give regularly to good causes. Establish a private life. Nastier rulers will use what they know about you and to push you around. Scrub your computer of malware. Remember that email is like skywriting. Those things are really important to keep in mind still. And oh my gosh, so much more actually is that relevant than it even was 6 years ago, as our lives are more and more online and less private.
Run for school board. I like that. Just responding to a comment.
Yeah, learn from others in other countries. Keep up your friendships abroad. Make new friends abroad. The present difficulties here are an element of a general trend, and no country is going to find a solution by itself. Make sure you and your family have passports. Watch out for paramilitaries who, when the men with the guns, who have always claimed to be against the system, start wearing uniforms and marching around with torches and pictures of their leader, the end of the world is nigh, right? Or the end of democracy, anyway. When the pro leader paramilitary and official police and paramilitary intermingle, it's game over. And we're seeing that in parts, right? We've seen that in pieces of the country and patches here and there. Um, it's if we certainly saw it on January 6th, and I think that might have been, the step too far, and people became rather more aware of the danger of that sort of situation.
Although the police forces certainly didn't. They've doubled down, but go ahead.
Yeah, across the country, local police forces have doubled down, as you say. But in terms of um, seeing the Proud Boys and seeing the Oath Keepers for what they are, which are violent paramilitary groups, that did shed a little national light and understanding. Still, there are other paramilitary groups. Be reflective if you must. Be reflective if you must be armed. If you carry a weapon in public service, God bless, but know that the evils of the past involved policemen and soldiers finding themselves one day doing irregular things. Be ready to say no. If you don't know what this means, contact the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and ask about training in professional ethics. So, as Teresa just pointed out, those that carry weapons in public service certainly have not done that. And in fact, we seem to be farther down that line than ever at this point. Number 19, be as courageous as you can. And number 20, be patient. I'm sorry, not be patient, be a patriot. The glasses. I need new glasses. The incoming president is not a patriot. He's, speaking of Trump in this case, set a good example of what America means for the generations to come. They will need it. Timothy Snyder is a historian, and he wrote the book on tyranny. And I will go ahead and post a link to this article, which I do think, while not without its flaws, is a really good elucidation of how to be an ungovernable citizen in a country that is dangerously close, that is flirting with fascism pretty hard.
I think the anti-democratic forces know how powerful it can be when you understand something clearly and speak your mind about it to effect to your friends. It spreads, and so does propaganda, and so does mind control. So that it's very frustrating. For example, right now in the United States, when I say right now, I mean overall all of my life. It has been difficult to get people to consider joining a union. I actually succeeded in doing that once with a group of people, and actually we were just guinea pigs for the drug naproxen. I was one of the original guinea pigs for that drug, and I found the true meaning of mind control whenever I started talking about how we needed. I was in a little group of about 12 people, and we were just being grossly humiliated and oppressed by the people who were testing it on us. We had taken the job in desperation, of course. And when I started talking about us all getting together and pushing back, the first things out of people's mouths were just the most obedient phrases about obeying our masters and not having a reputation for being otherwise. But long story short, we did actually push back successfully and got more money and much more dignity simply by getting together. Well, this is incomprehensible to people generally in the United States, and especially given the fact that they don't understand capitalism at all. But when it comes to just whether we get to live or die with a nuclear posture review, and with the outbreak, as I was mentioning earlier, of the idea that nuclear war is somehow survivable, this is something we need to push back on hard and constantly. And one of the things that I think I think one of the things that I like to say that kind of gets people's attention is there's discussion. If you look into the effects of nuclear weapons at all, what you find online is a discussion of one nuclear weapon hitting a city. That's not how it works. That's not what would happen if Lukashenko were to set off a nuke and a general exchange were to take place. The Russians decided a long time ago, under the Soviets, that they weren't going to trust the targeting accuracy of their weapons. What's called, let's see, CE, circular error probable, CEP, much discussed during the Gulf War about Scud missiles. They weren't going to trust that, so they went for larger weapons, 100 kilotons and up, the same ones that Lukashenko is calling tactical, ridiculously, is calling tactical nuclear weapons. Well, they're larger than that. And you need to understand that here in Portland, we would not be hit by one and not by two. We'd probably be hit by about 20. The smoking crater is accurate. It's not an exaggeration. There would be absolutely nothing left here but radioactive death. It is not survivable. There's no chance of surviving it.
Gotcha.
Okay. But I think that Americans.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but I'm like, yes.
I think Americans are thinking, well, other people may die, but I'll hide in my basement. No, you won't.
No, it does not work that way. And so, good people who are watching and listening, let us take it upon ourselves to, in fact, reinstill the absolute terror of nuclear war, of nuclear exchanges. John, I appreciate your reference to General Jack Ripper. Dr. Strangelove should, in fact, be required watching, along with War Games, the first Matthew Broderick film from the early 80s.
That was Matthew Broderick.
It was. Both of those really should be required watching for most folks. And I think that it's really important, again, to make sure that we are very clear with those around us that nuclear war is not winnable and it's unthinkable. We really have to move on into a non-nuclear world, at least, as far as it being an acceptable method, an acceptable weapon to use to advance your cause. It is not. It is not ever. It is never justified, and it's not survivable. All right.
Yep, that covers it.
Cool. Oh, look, the cat wants back in your lap now.
Oh, hello, Miss Belly Ripper. How are you?
Okay, so what else? What else do we want to say? I have a tarot reading. We are here right before the summer solstice. Summer solstice is, in fact, next week. And this year it's falling on the 21st. It's usually the between the 20th and the 22nd. And indeed, this year, the 21st, when the sun enters the sign of Cancer at 7:58 in the morning here, Pacific time. That is the official midsummer point or start of summer, depending on how you look at that. And what do we say about this time of year? It is the time of year to really absorb all of the energy and to be in touch with our joy and in touch with our passion. And that might seem counter to looking at nuclear war. It might seem counter to looking at nuclear devastation or the advancing fascism in our country. But I'm going to go ahead and put out there that it's not. In fact, it is absolutely essential to be in touch with our joy, to be in touch with our passions. As we look at these horrible things, and they are indeed horrible, and they are indeed things that we have to look at, let us actually infuse ourselves with a sense of joy and a sense of passion. It gives us strength to actually resist the horrors that are out there. Without joy, without passion, without that feeling that one gets when one is connecting with their friends on a beautiful summer's day in the open air, to not be infused with that sort of joy, that sort of connection, that sort of love, leaves us far easier to manipulate and leaves us far far more fatigued. It leaves us sort of despondent with, as we live isolated lives, not in touch with passion or joy. Well, what are we fighting for? Who cares? Whatever. Let's just, we'll just live in the moment and fall over. I don't know. It's so important as things get worse in some ways to really hang on to joy, to practice joyfulness and to love. And then I have these cards that I pulled today, and they really reflect the spirit of this time. They reflect the summer solstice pretty dramatically here. We have the Page of Pentacles, we have the Queen of Wands, and we have the Four of Swords. What do these cards say? Well, Page of Pentacles talks about really taking stock of your gifts, of your own your gifts, your own nature, and to make a plan, to plan now for a great future, to think about think about what you want your life to be like, and to move forward on that path in a way that puts the pieces together in a way that you like. The Queen of Wands talks about really knowing yourself and celebrating your own wisdom, making sure that you rest, that you dream, knowing that you are a powerful person, and that in your dreaming, in your rest, your wisdom is no less. And these things all work together to make sure that you remain in your power, in your creative flow. And then the Four of Swords is in this deck, it's a picture of a cat awaiting belly rubs. And it is a card of that reminds us to relax and enjoy, and that the mind needs a place to rest and recuperate from hard analysis, and that it's well deserved to take a little vacation. It's necessary to rest the mind so that you can continue the good fight with a good perspective and not deplete yourself, not burn out. And so basically, as a whole, the cards are advising to take a little break, to make sure that you're being very kind to yourself. Know that you are awesome, absolutely awesome, and that it is a good time to make some plans for how you want to put your life together, how you want to be as time moves on, how you want to be in the future. Plan for it now, and plan with joy and with love. That's what I have to say.
Good then.
All right. I love the suggestion from Jabara about running for school board, making sure that we keep our power localized, where we can actually have a huge impact on people's immediate lives. That's fantastic. Please, everyone watching, do hit the like button on this video and share it around with your friends and family. I want to thank everyone who does that on a consistent basis. It's fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that. We have picked up a couple new subscribers. If you are not yet a subscriber, please do subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when we're doing this thing that we do pretty much every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Anything else to add?
Well, I'm about to be officially old, so I've, this is a milestone for me, and it changes the nature of my Social Security for one thing. And of course, I think that it's time to make decisions about, for example, there have been some times that when I stand up and I do not grunt, well, we'll put an end to that. And certainly intend to fart louder and more often to announce to the world that I am officially old. Actually, I'm pretty happy to have made it to old age. So hurrah.
Is this the demarcation point, I believe, on much in Social Security world, yes, but I don't know. Old, yeah. It's a state of mind.
Well, and even those institutions that insist that you're not senior till you're senior, I will be senior.
All right, there we have it.
Yeah. That's another thing that old people do is shake my finger at you. I have to say, stay off my lawn too.
You've been saying stay off my lawn for a
Yeah, but I'll
minute.
say it with force.
Okay. New vigor. And with that, as Teresa enters her senior years,
Yes. Tercera edad.
we move on and hope you have a wonderful solstice. Enjoy this upcoming week and be good to yourselves and each other.
Yep.
All right.
See you all next time. Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea.
Cheery bye.
Bye bye. Can almost hear those ships now. Wah.